O thy kind Father God. Gladden our hearts through the fragrance of thy love. Brighten our eyes through the light of thy guidance. Delight our ears with the melody of thy word. And shelter us in the stronghold of thy providence. Thou art the mighty and the powerful. Thou art the forgiver, and thou art the one who overlooketh the shortcomings of mankind. Abdul Bahai.
Come on in, everyone. The following is a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Quote, "Here is the true meaning and value of compassion and nonviolence. When it helps us to see the enemy's point of view, to hear his questions, to know his assessment of ourselves. From his view, we may indeed see the basic weakness of our own condition. And if we are mature, we may learn and grow and profit from the wisdom of the brothers who are called the opposition." End quote. Today we invite you to see and listen with eyes and ears of compassion and reflect on assessing yourselves from the point of view of those whose human rights have always been questioned. We encourage you to see yourselves through their eyes, to step in their shoes, and not to necessarily respond in any particular way, but to spend time inhabiting their pain and their joy and beauty, so that you can gain insight about yourself and your power to help change this world. We will first start with a video.
Peace all over the world. I have some very sad news for all of you, and I think sad news for all of our fellow citizens and people who love peace all over the world. And that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis. Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in the cause of that effort. In this difficult day, in this difficult time for the United States, it's perhaps well to ask what kind of a nation we are and what direction we want to move in. For those of you who are black, considering the evidence evidently is that there were white people who were responsible, you can be filled with bitterness and with hatred and a desire for revenge. We can move in that direction as a country, in greater polarization, black people amongst blacks, and white amongst whites, filled with hatred toward one another. Or we can make an effort, as Martin Luther King did, to understand and to comprehend and replace that violence, that stain of bloodshed that is spread across our land with an effort to understand compassion and love.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
But we have to make an effort in the United States. We have to make an effort to understand, to get beyond or go beyond these rather difficult times. My favorite poem, my favorite poet was Aeschylus. He once wrote, even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God. What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another. Feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black.
It gives me great privilege to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Greg McAllister. He's a historian, musician, and artist who strives to bring greater understanding of race unity through the intellect and the arts. He currently is a faculty in the Ethnic Studies program at Northern Arizona University, where he teaches courses on African American studies, the history of racial formation in the United States, and race relations in American films. His research has focused on the history of African and Native American relations in the Southwest during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. His current teaching and research includes examining writings and speeches of Martin Luther King in relation to issues of the 21st century. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Greg McAllister.
Hello, friends. Hello. How's it going? Good, good. All right, let me get set up here. All right, so because of the time constraints, I'm going to really try to stay focused here. And this is my goal. First, I want to talk about, well, I won't necessarily be in sequence, but I just want to set you up for what I'm going to talk about. Okay, one topic, I'm going to talk about the formation of race in the United States. And I feel like you know, I'm a historian, so that's my habit. I have to look at things in a historical context. So I want to set that up. And I'm going to talk about the emergence of white identity, okay, in the 1600s. Next, I want to talk about Martin Luther King, but really the Martin Luther King of 1968, when he was assassinated, because that's not the Martin Luther King that's normally celebrated. It's almost as if he gave the I Had a Dream speech and then he died. Okay, so there's much more to that. And I've titled this Grappling with Martin Luther King because there's some conflicting things. And part of it really is to try to understand why Martin Luther King has been, as Cornel West says, Santa Clausified. Okay. In many ways, he's become kind of a founding father. So he's up there with George Washington and Jefferson. And so that's kind of problematic. Okay. Very problematic. So I want to just kind of set that straight. And so I want to talk about my struggle with this and talking about this. Because, again, I think a lot of the things that he talked about during the last year of his life is so relevant to the 21st century. Okay. Let's see, what was the other thing? Oh, yeah. The 3 evils, or 4 evils. Actually, he talked about 4 evils. So I want to make sure, you know, if you forget everything that I've talked about, I will be extremely happy if you can remember the 4 evils that he warned us about. Okay, so that's the other thing. And then last but not least, I want to do some drumming. And I might do that at the end. I'm going to do some drumming with my tone back and do a hidden word of Baha'u'llah. So I'll probably end with that. Okay. Let me test the clicker here. It's working. Okay, so again, I've been grappling with the Martin Luther King of 1968. And part of it's some frustration because no one really seems to know this particular part of who he was. Okay, so now for the history. Let's see. I don't like being behind that. Okay, all right. Now, this diagram that you see here is pretty much the racial order that was created in the 1600s. And this particular piece is based on the works of a historian, pretty much an autodidactic historian by the name of Theodore Allen. And this man had basically a high school education, but he was very working class oriented scholar. And he spent something like 20 years going into every single county in Virginia, every single county in Maryland, and looking at the records, the colonial records. And so what came out of that research is 2 very thick books, and it's called The Invention of the White Race. And in the first volume, he says in 1619, when the first African captives were brought to Jamestown, Virginia, he says there were no white people. That term did not exist. And it wasn't until the 1680s that it emerges. So just to give you an idea of the structure of how this developed, when I teach this to my students, I have them think about this particular pattern as your medieval army. Now at the top, you see the top where it says capitalist class? Well, think about that as the ruling class. Okay, so these are the folks on the horses, right? You got your knights, you got the king. They're doing well, right? They got, just layers of armor, and no one's going to hurt them, all right? They're on their horses. Now the first triangle there, those were the yeomen. Okay, in the medieval period, you had these. They weren't quite as well off as the kings and the noblemen, but they were allowed to have weapons. They had their bows. They had their armor, but they also had land. Okay, so they were invested in protecting that. Okay, now you see that line there, non-white. So back in the medieval period, these were the peasants. Okay. Now this is where I ask the question. Okay. Now the peasants don't have swords. They don't have the bows. And again, if you think about this as a formation of an army, they're in the front, right? So what are they given to fight with? Farm tools, yeah, sticks, rocks, okay? And if you think about it, they're probably, they're not really voluntarily there. They may not want to be there. And if they decide that, hey, this is ridiculous, I'm an Englishman, but I have no issues with the French. He may decide, okay, I'm going to go throw rocks, at the guys on the horses. So who's going to stop them? Yeah, the yeomen, they got the bows, they got the land, okay? So this is how race has worked as well. So, and Calvin, I think I'll have you talk about the Bacon Rebellion. Yeah, I'll let you talk about that. But that basically sets up, let's see, how should I see this without talking about it? Let's see. Okay, so by the 1680s, the ruling elites started to have issues with the whites. Okay, and the thing is that upper triangle, they were unruly. A lot of them, in fact, I would say three-quarters of the settler population in Virginia during the time that the first Africans were brought, they were brought as slaves, okay? Those slave ships, you've all seen pictures of those slave ships, they were originally designed for Irish Catholics from the wars, German prisoners. They were brought in those ships in chains. Imagine this, you're an Irish Catholic, you're brought into Virginia, you've been fighting, right? You've been fighting the crown. You arrive in Virginia and, you're pissed off, right? Yeah. And so you had to have the structure to create a way in which you would eventually pay off these people, and so that they would, number one, control the Africans who were rebelling, as well as take indigenous land. Okay, so this is a very important piece in terms of white identity and how it emerges. In a sense, white folks, your job is to control people of color. Your job is to take indigenous land. Your job is to prevent slave revolts. Okay, that was the main thing. So how do you do that? Well, you have to make sure that they're armed. So this Second Amendment, a big piece of that is making sure that the white folks are doing their job, keeping the people of color down, taking the land. So this still persists, okay? Okay, let's see. Whoops. So I just want to bring the story forward. This is a quote by W.E.B. Du Bois. He was a scholar. And in 1903, he writes this, I would call a love letter to white America. And it's a book called The Souls of Black Folks. I highly recommend that you read it. And So here's what I'm setting up here. The whole racial issue, white supremacy, racism, it's an international issue. It's just not an issue of the United States, okay? It relates to, again, taking indigenous land. It's also about having members of the working class that could be used as scabs, right, to upset working strikes, but also motivate, folks to go fight wars, okay, which was a very strong concern of Martin Luther King. Again, that's the Martin Luther King we do not know. Okay, so here's the quote. The problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. The relations of the darker to the lighter races of men in Asia, in America, Africa, in America, and that means Latin America as well, the islands of the seas. So that's pretty much the whole world. And if you think about the time that this was written, the United States is already expanding, right? The West, that whole thing of taking over the West, indigenous lands in the West, that's over. In fact, I think we already started to take over Hawaii. We're in the Philippines. So this is internationalized, right? In a sense, yes, we're a republic, but in reality, we are an empire. Okay, this is something that is expanding. I have 5 minutes? Okay, all right. Wait till you get up here, Calvin. Okay. All right, so one of the things about Du Bois, I can't talk about Du Bois anymore. We have to go right to King. Okay, so this is a part of a speech that the King gave. Actually, it's a year to the day before he was assassinated. So this is April 4th, 1967. So that very day, a year later, he's assassinated. So here's what he says. I am convinced that if we are to get on the right side of the world revolution, this world revolution is actually the anti-colonial movements that are happening in Africa and in Asia. So this is the context. We as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society, when machines, computers, profit motives, and property rights are considered more important than people. So here, this is like an early draft in the sense of when he starts to talk about the four evils. So here he says the giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism. Okay? Let's see. Are incapable of being conquered. A true revolution of values will soon cause us to question the fairness and justice of many of our past and present policies. Here's another one. Here's another quote. And what's interesting here, this is another revolution that he's talking about. Okay, so again, there's this international revolution, anti-colonialism. In a sense, the Vietnam War is part of that revolution. And, we're on the wrong side. But also, there's revolt happening in the streets. Okay, we have the Watts riots. And many African scholars on this period, they don't even call them riots anymore. These are called revolts. Okay, urban revolts. In fact, some of the same soldiers that were fighting in Vietnam end up repressing the revolt. So folks like the Panthers, they're seeing a connection. Okay, we're being oppressed, so I guess the Vietnamese rebels, they're with us. Okay, so this is part of that conflict there. And of course, Martin Luther King also sees this. Okay, he's preaching nonviolence to his urban youth, and the urban youth say to him, well, our country's using violence, So what's wrong with us? You know, what was it, H. Rap Brown? He said, you know, that violence is American as apple pie. Okay? Okay, so here we go. Millions of Americans are coming to see that we are fighting an immoral war that costs nearly $30 billion a year, that are perpetuating racism. Now, it's interesting. He's seeing these wars connected with racism. Again, he's combining the civil rights issues, black liberation, with these international wars, with militarism. Okay, I think I'm gonna jump down because my time is almost gone, right? Okay, see, I'm trying to be good. All right, so, but here, I can't point, let's see. Look at this right here. It is forcing America to face, let me jump up. Our moral values, our spiritual confidence, okay, the Black revolutions is much more than a struggle for the rights of Negroes. I think that's very important. It is forcing America to face all its interrelated, so these are interrelated flaws. Racism. Now, so here he talks about poverty. Poverty, militarism, and materialism. Now, I think if I have to sum up anything in here, he talks about this in a number of his speeches during the last year of his life. And he actually interchanges poverty with the word economic exploitation. So he actually talks about economic exploitation and racism being like evil twins. You can't have one without the other. So these things that are interrelated. All right, what's the other thing? Superficial flaws suggest. So here he's talking about, now you're not going to hear this on Martin Luther King Day, right? No one's going to talk about this. A radical reconstruction of society itself is the real issue to be faced. So, how to wind this one up? This is how I'll wind it up. Okay, so in a sense, we're here as to kind of have a report card, right? You know, are we there yet, right? Have we made progress? This is where I'm going to insert the independent investigation of truth. Now, this is something that I teach. You know, again, the classroom is kind of a dictatorship, right? I determine, what everyone studies, what everyone reads, but I try to, get their input. And in a sense, I always tell them, you don't have to believe me. You have to, make your own decision. I cannot think for you. So I'm challenging you as well. So here are some sources. And I think definitely in this age of Black Lives Matters, the age of mass incarceration, the United States is number one with incarcerating its citizens. More than Iran, more than China, more than Cuba, more than Russia. We're number one, okay? So think about that when you hear the national anthem, right? Land of the free, okay? So the Radical King has a lot of the speeches that I drew from. That's a very good source. Another book is called Martin Luther King, The Inconvenient Hero. Souls of Black Folk, that's Du Bois. Also some interesting books here. The only one I haven't read is The Color of Law. But this one basically, I think, talks about how the US government created these racialized spaces that we call ghettos and suburbs, okay? In the zoning, yeah. So that's a very important piece for your historical. My goal is to read that by the end of summer. This is a very important book, The New Jim Crow. Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. This is an amazing book. Actually, if there was one, maybe two books that you should read, I would say Radical King and The New Jim Crow. Book I'm working on right now, to my left, very far left, The Color of Money, Black Banks, and the Racial Wealth Gap. This is really a very compelling book that talks about, again, how many immigrant groups seem to be doing well than folks that were here from the beginning, African Americans as well as indigenous people. This book kind of tells how this was set up, okay? So, all immigrant groups faced racial oppression. The Italians, okay? And she gives the example. Okay, so you had black banks, okay, that struggled to make it. Many of them failed. But also there was an Italian bank that was created. And it's interesting, because of the racial oppression, again, they had to pool the resources, okay? But once the Italians were incorporated into our society, through the New Deal, they changed the name from the Bank of Italy to the Bank of America. So, I think I'll leave it this, and maybe later on I can drum. Yeah, that's a good place to leave it. Okay, I think I'll leave with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. McAllister. Next, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Joel Orona, who is a Chiricahua and Lipan Apache with a doctoral degree in psychology. He has applied his professional background in education, psychology, and human services, focusing principally on American Indians and other indigenous populations. At the national level, Dr. Orona has lectured at several U.S. colleges and universities, worked with organizations, the federal government, and tribal communities, and appeared on various radio and cable television. He also served as a team leader under President Clinton's administration on a project for the Secretary of Indian Affairs. Internationally, his services included education and socioeconomic development with organizations in Canada, Mexico, Central and South America, and East Africa. Dr. Orona served as co-director at the Native American Bahai Institute near Hawk, Arizona, on the Navajo Reservation. Before that, he served at the U.S. Bahai National Center as coordinator for the schools and institutes and as director of the Black Hawk Educational Institute in Chicago. Dr. Orona is a nationally recognized player of the North American Indian flute and storyteller of traditional American Indian stories for all ages. He is also a writer of poetry and songs and currently working on several book projects. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Orona.
Good afternoon. That's a lot. I didn't know I was that old. Well, here I am, and I'd like to greet each and every one of you on this Race Unity celebration. So I greet you with greetings and blessings of several religions and cultures as a unifying theme for our Race Unity celebration. First, I greet you as a Bahai in Allahu Akbar, Tuscan Aziz. Assalamu alaikum. Hindi kami sama. El Shamu To Bu. Jewish. Might have slipped that one a little bit. Sarwa Maitra. Buddhism. Namaste. Ning Hao. And Ohayo gozaimasu. Ohayo gozaimasu. Konnichiwa. And I could go on, but we don't have enough time. And so I would like to end with my Apache blessings, which is very universal. Nanenago ojone ata ninitsingo nanena. May your paths be always blessed. So, I would like to start with a presentation with a prayer from America, revealed by Abdul Bahai, one of the three principal personages of the Bahai faith. It seemed appropriate to me on this race unity celebration to message with a prayer of such. Race unity, and therefore unity of any kind, begins with one's own community, as the family, the neighborhood, the city, and of course seeing one's nation as a larger community, which then translates, of course, to the whole planet, which we are invited to participate in, regardless of our color or culture or creed. So in our diverse cultures, sometimes we refer to us as races, but I say, from a Baha'i perspective, we are one human family. This is the prayer for America. Then I'm going to conclude with a short flute piece. I have to tell you that looking at the video and the two personages that were assassinated made me quite emotional, going back to 1968. So I hope I can hold my flute steady. Thank you. Oh, thou kind Lord, this gathering is turning to thee. These hearts are radiant with thy love. These minds and spirits are exhilarated by the message of thy glad tidings. Oh God, let this American democracy become glorious in spiritual degrees, even as it has aspired to material degrees, and render this just government victorious. Confirm this revered nation to raise the standard of the oneness of humanity, to promulgate the most great peace, to become thereby most glorious and praiseworthy among all the nations of the world. Oh God, this American nation is worthy of thy favors and is deserving of thy mercy. Make it precious and near to thee through thy bounty and thy bestowals. Amen. Amen. Thank you. Full palm, always, right? Okay, let me see what the Spirit brings today.
So I've known Calvin Terrell since I was 16. We were both 16. We grew up together. And he wanted me to just introduce him as, here's my brother Calvin. But it is partially because he deserves a great introduction, and the other part is I just love him and I'm so proud of him that I will read his bio. Calvin Terrell is founder and lead equity coach of Social Centric Institute, an organization designed to educate and train all ages to enhance human interactions for global progress. He is former assistant director of the National Conference for Community Justice, Anytown, USA, Arizona region, and has taught for Upward Bound at Arizona State University for more than 20 years. Calvin has led comprehensive workshops for valuing diversity, equity, and justice building in schools, corporations, and civic organizations for thousands of adults, children, and youth throughout the USA. In 2000, Calvin was awarded the City of Phoenix Martin Luther King Jr. Living the Dream Award for his dedication to human rights. Calvin's reputation for sustainable impact have afforded him collaborative venues with Chief Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, Janet Napolitano, and prompted Harpo Incorporated, Oprah Winfrey's production company, to seek him out to provide justice seminars for Harpo employees and equity coaching. Calvin is an educator and healer at his core, definitely a healer. An educator. His techniques are engaging, relevant to all populations, multidisciplinary, and integrate modern advances of technology and research, partnered with ancient arts of storytelling and visualization. Calvin's greatest motivations are his marriage of 25 plus years, 4 children, faith, and service. Please help me in welcoming Calvin Terrell.
Hello? So, hey, my name is Calvin. Thank you for this opportunity. 20 minutes goes fast, man. I saw Brother Greg, like, he had to, like, rush. So, I'd like to do this really quick. Before I go into a ritual thing that's very important to me, Brother Arona, you know, he said, we come with multiple identities. My primary identity is a soul. And as a soul, I identify with the Bahai community, identify as a human, identify as a human experiencing Black membership of the human race. Born within these United States, straight, born in an industrialized nation, but also I see kinship with all the other species, other elements of our society, of our world. You know, we've crossed all the boundaries by whatever you call that made the stars. Whether you call it Allah, God, Goddess, Yahweh, Wankantanka, Great Spirit, whatever you call that, we've crossed all of its boundaries. Land, air, sea, even space. But yet our man-made superstitions of race, class, gender, even religion, the man-made boundaries of prejudices, we have yet to cross. Yet we have crossed all the boundaries made by God. So, respect is a very important concept to me because unity is a virtue, right? But it's kind of hard to unite with someone if they don't respect you. If you're in a relationship and someone is unfaithful, it's hard to be united, right? If someone is constantly abusing you and hurting you, it's kind of hard to be united, right? So unity has to be built on a foundation of virtues. And you know what's underneath all those virtues? Truth. Truthfulness. If we don't have brutal, ugly truth, man, we really can't be united. Because our unity is a lie. It's based on some false stuff. It's got to be really truth. grounded in truth. Now, respect, if you break it down, is a prefix meaning like refresh, like again, anew. You ever go to a website and you refresh it, it changes, right? So means afresh, anew. And spect is a Latin root word, literally meaning to look. So respect, if you break it down, it literally means to look again. Just look again. A lot of times, at situations, ideas, peoples, we look once. Oh, I got you. Or at a situation, at a concept, well, look once. But to look again, and to look again, and to look again, that's respect. To keep looking deeper, deeper, deeper. So, before we get into this, let's practice some respect. I'm going to put on some music, okay? I have it right here. And when I put this music on, simple. I just need you to get up and to as many people in your area as possible. I want you to shake a hand. I want you to give a hug. I want you to give a high five. Give somebody a booty bump, whatever. Keep it legal, whatever you do, all right? But the only thing you can say is, I don't want you to get into conversations with people. The only thing you can say is, I see you. I see you. That's it. Do that for as many people in this space as possible. Got it? On your mark, get set. Are we ready? What you want? What you want? All right, go sit down. Go on, sit back down. Sit back down. Go on. Okay, my time is limited, all right? And guess what? You don't have to run back to your seat. Sit with some new people. Make some friends, Come on, break up. It's Unity Day, Before we get started with this, I'd like you to look at this again. I am standing here alone, but I'm not standing here by myself. My ancestors, your ancestors, our ancestors are standing here with me. And I believe our ancestors come in all colors, whatever you call humanity, so-called yellow, black, white, red, and brown. There were many people of all backgrounds, all beliefs that went before us that fought for peace, unity, and justice. Anybody know who Ralph Abernathy is? He was Martin Luther King Jr.'s best friend. My mother's maiden name is Abernathy. That is my cousin. His work is my blood. So I'm honoring him. 50 years, man. King he didn't die, he was killed. Then Bobby Kennedy was killed. Whoa, this fall is the 100-year anniversary of the ending of World War I. Man, Barack Obama was elected 10 years ago this November. I don't know why we're clapping, because imperialism got a facelift. I'm not a liberal or a Democrat or a Republican or a conservative. I'm a soul. Politics, man, a tick is a blood-sucking insect, and poly means many. You put politics together, that's a lot of blood-sucking insects. So, I need to also honor the land, because this space where we're standing is the United States, the USA. I believe in honoring that. But do you know this very space right here? Look at this again. Look at this again. This space right here. Before this was called the USA, this very space right here, this was Mexico. Man, I believe in honoring that. And before this was called the USA and Mexico, all of these lands are the lands of indigenous people. We're in the land of the Ukum right now. That means people of the desert, right? Now, I put up 10 fingers. If each one of my fingers is 10%, what percentage do I have up right now if each finger is 10%? 100, good man. I heard you. That little voice, you could pass that state exam. So consider this, los indígenas, the native populations of these lands now called the United States. Before European refugees came to this land, because come on, y'all, let's name it. They weren't pilgrims. Pilgrim is somebody on a religious journey. That was used as a propaganda tool in the 1800s. Europe had collapsed environmentally and socially. Feudalism, war, disease, rampant poverty, crime. They were refugees. So when European refugees came to this land, the native population was 100% of the population of these lands. Today, the native population is considered less than 2% of the population of these lands. If you were not familiar with that, that is called an attempted genocide. So we are the land of the free, home of the brave, but we're also the land of the thief, home of the slave. And we have not yet reconciled that duality. We have not earned united in these United States. Come on. At the end of the pledge, what does it say? And justice for? And justice for? All. Some people say it should say all for just us, right? So let's get to ugly truth really quick. Antidotes for a disease are found where? In the disease. You find anti-venom where? In the venom. So if racism is a disease or dis-ease, the language of the English is so fascinating. I'm speaking the language of the English right now, right? This comes from England. Yo hablo español poquito, mi esposa es mexicana. Yo aprendemos en la academia. Sí, mira, español, ¿que dónde es español? Idioma de colonia, sí. Spanish comes from Spain, right? Je français un peu, un petit peu. J'ai étudié à l'école secondaire 2 ans, oui. Où est-ce que français? From France, right? Portuguese, obrigado. So all these languages we speak, English, Spanish, French, Portuguese of the Western Hemisphere, a little Dutch in the islands, they all come from Europe. They were all brought to these lands by terror and trauma. Let that simmer. Respect. Look again. Look again. This language I am speaking right now is a manifestation of historical trauma. It is not the indigenous language of this land. And it's ugly. But if we're going to get united, man, when families do healing work, when they do therapy, ugly stuff comes out. So if we're going to really get united, we got to confront this ugly. Hey, you know what? My time goes quick. So I don't have time to show all my signs, but I do have time to show this one. See those babies? You see them? Hey, can you tell if they're a man or a woman? No. Can you tell their sexuality? No. Their cognitive abilities? They could all be Jewish. They could all be Muslim. They could all be atheists or Wiccan. They could all practice some indigenous faiths. They could all be Baha'is, various Christian denominations, Catholic, Protestant, LDS, non-denominational, Jehovah's Witness. Man, they could all be from the United States. They could all be wealthy or so-called materially poor. They could all be a lot of things. Guess what? We can't tell. We can tell 2 things. They're babies. And we can see phenotype. Which one is most likely to be killed unarmed by police? Which one is most likely to be asked, hey, where are you from? And then the child says, Phoenix. And they go, no, where are you from? Because when people say where you from, that's about your ancestry, right? Hey, which one is most likely to lose their family in the Mediterranean Sea, crossing to try to just get food? Which one is most likely to be killed in the desert by a hate group, right? And maybe that hate group is called neo-Nazis, ISIS, US military, Israeli military. Which one is most likely to inherit wealth? Hey, ooh, unity, right? Look again. Which one is most likely to see routine representations of themselves as beautiful? Which one is most likely to see their histories portrayed as noble? To see the sciences and the arts and the religions of people that look like them to be portrayed as gods and angels? Which one is most likely to be portrayed as demons and killers So here's this. Repeat after me. If we're comfortable, we're complacent. If we're comfortable, we're complicit. So there is violence in the world right now. And Dr. King talked about nonviolence, right? Violence isn't just physical. Physical is the manifestation of the symptom of other violences. There's mental violence, making people feel they have no intellectual capital. They have nothing good to say. They're not smart. Emotional violence, to hurt the heart, to make people feel worthless and beat down. And all of that is facilitated and sustained by social violence. One of the main tools of social violence is gossip and backbiting. Do you know there are some cultures on the planet that say gossip and backbiting is a sin worse than murder, because you can literally kill a person socially to the point they will want to kill themselves physically. We have been passing that bloody baton on so long as a human race that we literally have children now killing themselves because of what happens in social media. So if we are just going to walk away from today and binge on Netflix, go back to our comfortable homes, kick up our feet, live our life as usual, if we are not building new muscles, challenging ourselves materially, socially, spiritually, emotionally, we are a part of the violence. If you're comfortable, you're complicit. Hey, building the muscle stings, huh? If you study the American Revolution from the perspective of the British, I've been to Hammersmith. They call us terrorists. Study the American Revolution from the perspective of the British. We're called terrorists. Hey, Martin Luther, John Calvin, they were protesting, right? Protesting. That protesting eventually became Protestant. If you study the Boston Tea Party, man, that ain't nothing but looting and rioting, right? So the United States, as we know it, what did Patrick say? Give me liberty or give me... Man, that sounds like the mantra of a suicide bomber. So our entire society was built in violence. And guess what? Most revolutionaries, hey, do you know when they're successful? It's not because they're more virtuous than their oppressors. It's because they are more violent than their oppressors. So we are at a point right now as a human race. Albert Einstein said, I do not know how World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with rocks. Because he said that we will so destroy ourselves with World War III that if a World War IV goes down, it will be sticks and stones. And you know what? Maybe it needs to happen, because if we don't choose to get humble, some people say God is going to humble us. And you know what? It'll be all of our fault. It'll be all of our fault. So, hey, brothers and sisters, respect. Look again. Look at these little lights again. Yeah, which one is most likely to be killed unarmed tonight? Which one's most likely to go to bed hungry tonight? Hey, which one, if they use crack, will be demonized, and which one, if they use opioids, will be deified? There's the crack epidemic. Thugs, killers need to be rounded up. Opioid epidemic. Oh, take care of these people. They're suffering. They're struggling. Man, that is white supremacy at its finest. If we're comfortable, we're complicit. Brothers and sisters, Dr. King, before he was murdered, his voice was not just some pleasing thing. It was disruptive. It was stirring. So I'd like you to walk away with this. I'd like you to think about, what do you want to say to people that look like you? People that look like you. To invite them to the circle of healing as a human race. Because before we get united, we got to really heal. What do you want to say to white men if you're a white man? To invite white brothers to the circle of healing. If you're a Persian woman, what do you want to say to Persian women? To invite them to the circle of healing. If you are a black woman, what do you want to say to black women? If you are a Latina or a Latinx brother, what do you want to say to them? If you're mixed, yo, Brother Lyle says something really deep. When you go into a garden, you don't see colors, you see beauty. But guess what? You gotta see it. You gotta go into it. You gotta get into the stuff. So this isn't just about coming together once a year and breaking bread and then walking away and living our life as usual. Because I'm working with the kids on the street, and it's almost my time, y'all. See, I know. Really quick, you all. I respond to crisis. I'm really happy to be here today. Flagstaff Police Department killed this kid named Kyle Garcia. I had to do mediation between the cops and community. Intense work, right? North High School, a riot broke out. 200 black kids over here, 200 Mexicanos over here. They're about to go to war. I took a bunch of kids up to the mountains, did some intense work on healing. I take Nazis and gangbangers out into the woods, okay? At one school, 4th grade girl, I can't say it because there's little ears in the room, stole another little girl's phone, took some really nasty pictures, took a picture of that nasty picture, wrote a nasty message, sent it to over 100 children. Because it came from the other little girl's phone, the other little girl tried to take her life, 4th grade. And whenever there's a horrible thing that happens, I worked with a woman by the name of Julie. She was at Columbine High School when it was shot up in 1999. No one called those boys Christian terrorists, by the way. Whenever there's this crisis, a horrible thing that happens in a space, there's always this phrase that people say. You know what the phrase is? They always say this every time. I'm always praying they don't, but they say it every time. The phrase is this: that wasn't supposed to happen here. That wasn't supposed to happen here. I'm always real gentle. But sometimes I want to say to them, well, in your mind, where was it supposed to happen? Because saying it wasn't supposed to happen here is almost an arrogant affirmation that it was supposed to happen somewhere else. So brothers and sisters, please do not fall into the Americana arrogance and think that the things that are happening around the world right now can't happen here. Syria was the first modern civil war that broke out over water. Syria started over water. So if we don't get united as a human race, that unity isn't just coming together and, you know, breaking out some enchilada, fried chicken, some hummus, you know, some tadig, right? No. Yeah, taco night, right? We united, we got tacos, right? We good. Nah, unity means we're gonna really do some deep therapy, some deep healing, and we can do it. If you know this song, I'm gonna end on this, because my ancestors, man, they didn't own anything, you know? They didn't own their children were sold away from them, their bodies, this and that. They didn't own anything, everything. I know a lot of, tell me some white people you know named Washington. You know any white people named Jackson, Franklin, Jefferson? It's a lot of black folks with the names of Washington, Jackson, and Franklin, and Jefferson, U.S. presidents, right? Hey, check it. My ancestors didn't own anything. You know what they would do when they would be working out there? They would sing. You know what that genre of music is called? Soul. Because that's all they own. That's all they have is their soul. So, hey, if we're going to heal, what do you want to say to people like you to invite them to this healing? And don't be fragile. Build the muscles, okay? We're going to sing. It's call and response. I sing the call, and then you respond. And then I'm going to shut up, y'all. All right. I'm building me a home. 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 'Cause this earthly house, come on, is gonna soon decay. And my soul's got to have somewhere to stay. So if you see me praying, I'm building me a home. Pick it up. If you see me praying, I'm building me a home. 'Cause this earthly house, pick it up, is gonna soon decay. And my soul's got to have somewhere to stay. So if you see me loving, I'm building me a home. If you see me loving, I'm building me a home. Before I go, I'd just like to say, if someone lit this room up with bullets, the blood on the ground would not be white. And don't ever be that freaking arrogant and think that cannot happen where you are sitting. Let that simmer. If someone sprayed this room with bullets, the blood on the ground would not be white. The blood would not be black. The blood would not be brown or yellow. It would all be red. And we would all scream and cry in the same language, and our tears would taste the same. Humankind is one. So either get humble and do the work, or I believe God will humble us. Aloha.
You guys see how much I love him, right? Just to clarify, if it was up to me, he'd be here all day speaking. So you know. Okay. I am proud to introduce Kawambe Omowale African Drum and Dance Theater, a captivating performing arts company that offers a glimpse of West African culture through performances of drumming, dancing, singing, and storytelling. Kawambe Omowale is a Phoenix-based arts company celebrating more than 20 years in the Valley of the Sun. Members perform throughout the Southwest and give the public a first-hand opportunity to experience West African music for themselves through their weekly community class. Their members have traveled to Senegal, the Gambia in West Africa, to study music and dance of the Mande cultures. They have also studied master artists from other African countries such as Ghana, Nigeria, and with master artists of Afro-Cuba de Matanza, an international performing arts company from Cuba. They have performed events such as Festival of Nations, the Yoruba Arts Festival, the International Youth Arts Festival, the International Percussive Arts Society's National Convention, and City of Phoenix, Dr. Martin Luther King Breakfast. Please help me in welcoming the Kawambe Omowale African Drum and Dance Theater.
Is this on? Well, good afternoon. We are so delighted to be here and to follow up that wonderful presentation you just, did I just go on? We are members of Kwambe Omawale African Drum and Dance Theater, as you heard in that wonderful introduction. The piece we just played for you was from Ivory Coast. It's called Ngorong, and it's a dance of young female initiates to present things that they have learned during that process of moving from childhood through the various stages into adulthood to become productive members of their communities. We are going to move on to another dance that is going to be presented by Nubia, I believe, as you're going to introduce. Okay, this is Nubia.
Thank you so much for having us. Our next piece is going to be Sosene, which is from the west region of West Guinea, West Africa. And it is a song that accompanies the dance, which is sung by daughters to their mothers to honor and thank them. And the dance, it's traditionally a masked dance where the spirit that embodies the mask is visiting the community to protect and offer love to the children and the community. So children can be seen as a bridge between the past, present, and future. So it's important to consciously or unconsciously determine what we teach our children so that they can carry on positive traditions. Thank you.
Thank you. The next piece we'd like to share with you is called Cuckoo. It's from the forest regions of Guinea, and there are several movements that look like birds, but we're going to ask for your participation. So I'm going to send out the beautiful dancers to go grab some amazing audience participants to join us for Cuckoo. Come on up, don't be shy.
If I come and touch your hand, please do not refuse.
Come around this way, please, here.
No last minute takers?
So while the community is dancing with us, you will be participating by clapping your hands and joining in with us as well. Okay. So you all are going to follow the dancers. You'll follow the dancers. You'll follow the singer. You'll follow myself.
Ready to leave. Y'all were really dancing and clapping. Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. It is really a joy and a blessing to be here with people who have one mission in mind, and for us to be communal. So thank you for having us. out of time, but I wanted to make sure that we introduce ourselves. We are Coambia Mawale. So here on my far left is Dr. Vance, also known as Nde. Here we have Mr. Solomon. Here we have one of our newest members, Chief. One of our veteran members, Sabara. One of our new members as well, Cindy, sorry. And I'm also a very veteran member. My name is Rabia too. We would like to take this time to quickly invite you to our Saturday class at 9 o'clock on Saturdays at East Lake Park. It is at 9 o'clock. Please be prompt. Our next class is June 23rd, and we do take July off. So if you can come in before we take our respite in July, that would be great. If not, come see us in August. And that is a class for the city of Phoenix. So you will need to make arrangements that way. Again, we are Kwame Omawale. Thank you for having us.
Okay, everyone, so as they're getting this cleaned up and lowering the screen, because we're going to end with a video, this is basically the end of our program. But before I end with some information about the video you're about to see, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of directions as to what will happen after this for food. So there's going to be 2 food stations, one outside here and one outside there. And what you will do is, for that side, you will exit the front, get your food, and there's seats back here. You can sit down. There's tables back there. And then for this food station, you will line up here. You will exit, get the food, and then enter, and the seats are back there. And the only thing we ask is that you do not bring food or drinks into this room. As you can see, it's carpeted. And so it will be hard to keep clean if there's food in here. Once you're done eating, you're welcome to come back and sit in here and chat. What else? There are, let's see, the follow-up activities to today's program. So there's Discourse for Racial Harmony, Friday, June 29th at 7 p.m. And it will be a dialogue on healing the ill effects of racism in our community and spiritually based reconciliation. This is all in your program, by the way, on the back page. There's the Spirituality Cafe, Saturday mornings, 9 to 11 a.m. People of all faiths and philosophical backgrounds discuss nature of the human condition with passages from wisdom and faith traditions. Free continental breakfast is provided. That's all happening here. And then there's Interfaith Devotion, Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Bahai devotional gathering with meditation, reflections, and prayers from the world's great religions. And so that is, and there's refreshments with that as well. So that's in your program, and that's all happening here. So, let's see. So this brings us to the end of our program for today with one final video to show you. Before we show the video, I'm going to end with another quote from Dr. Martin Luther King. He said, "With patient and firm determination, we will press on until every valley of despair is exalted to new peaks of hope, until every mountain of pride and irrationality is made low by the leveling process of humility and compassion, until the rough places of injustice are transformed into a smooth plain of equality of opportunity, and until the crooked places of prejudice are transformed by the straightening process of bright-eyed wisdom." The final video that will be played is Joshua Campbell and Harvard students beautifully performing Sing Out, March On, a powerful tribute to Representative John Lewis, who was the featured speaker at the 2018 Harvard commencement. And just for your information, often called one of the most courageous persons in the civil rights movement ever produced, John Lewis has dedicated his life to protecting human rights, securing civil liberties, and building what he calls the beloved community in America. His dedication to the highest ethical standards and moral principles has won him admiration of many of his colleagues on both sides of the aisles in the United States Congress. And so that will be the video that we will end with. And once the video is done, you can start lining up for food. And we encourage you to also sing out and march on and be a loving force in advancing the elimination of prejudice of all kinds. Thank you so much for your attendance, and we hope that you enjoyed the program today.
Well, I marched through the storm, and I marched through the rain, and I marched through some sickness and some heartache and pain. And I laid on the ground, and I looked up at the sky, and I prayed to the Lord up above and asked why. But oh no, I'm not tired, I'm not through marching yet. And I'm marching till I die, children, this you can bet. So we say, I'm gonna sing out, and I'm gonna march on. And everybody say, I'm gonna sing out, gonna march on, I'm gonna march on. Gonna put one foot in front of the other foot. Yes, I'm gonna sing out. Gonna march on. Gonna march on. I got to keep on keeping on. Yes, I am. Gonna march on. I'm gonna march on. Oh, well, my grandmama marched, and my granddad too. And I never thought it'd be something that I have to do. But I'll march if I must. I got a mission to see. And I'll be damned if my children have to march for me. Now I believe in the power of raising my voice, and I believe in the power of making some noise. Now if I die, I can't sing, and if I can't sing, I'll die. So we should sing for one another. Now let's give it a try. So we say, oh, gonna sing oh, I got to keep on, keep on marching on. Oh, gonna use my body for good. Oh, I'm gonna sing out, sing out. Oh, I'm gonna sing out, sing out, sing out, sing out, sing out, sing out. Oh, I see the world one time. I'm gonna sing out and I'm gonna march on.